Hello, Vincent Carroll speaking. This is tutorial number 34, alopecia. Alopecia is hair loss, often due to autoimmune attack on the hair. The hair can be partially lost, it can be lost in certain patterns, circular patterns on the scalp, or there can be total body hair loss from the entire body. That's much rarer than partial hair loss, obviously. But hair loss can occur for a number of reasons from an acupuncture and from a Western medical perspective. The traditional and alopecia areata is simply an autoimmune attack. Hair loss can occur, of course, through natural balding, and that's completely different. And often there's a familial pattern there. Hair loss also, of course, can occur from post-chemotherapy, for example, and there are reasons for that from an acupuncture perspective that we will look at in a few moments. So hair loss is something that covers a wide spectrum of causes, and one of those causes is autoimmune attack, and that is classic alopecia. And alopecia can be in very young people or it can be in older people. Sometimes it can start off as shedding of the hair, and that can progress into patchy hair loss, and that can progress into total hair loss. So, and there's no guarantee as to which way the condition will progress. Sometimes it stops, sometimes it starts, and from a Western point of view, we do not really have explanation for that. From an acupuncture perspective, the two main organs governing hair are the lungs. The lungs give sheen to the hair, a quality of good growth. Kidneys maintain the hair. For example, in a kidney deficiency, say due to shock, hair can grey and the quality of hair can deteriorate. But particularly premature greying of hair can be a sign of kidney energy loss. So the kidney and the lungs are involved in hair, but also heat as well, for the very simple reason yang rises. And the hair follicles, when you think of it, are very moisturized follicles, and anything that undermines the moisturization of the follicles will lead to the hair easily parting from the body. So brushing hair will take large wads of hair out of the body, and that might be very, very slowly replaced, if at all. So, for example, chemotherapy would be a very good example of that. From an acupuncture point of view, that puts heat into the body. Heat rises and causes temporary hair loss, because the follicles, from both an acupuncture and a Western medical point of view, are desiccated or dried out, are unable to allow the hair to remain and thrive within the follicle. However, it's reversible as temporary. When the chemotherapy ends, hair will recover. In alopecia, that is not the case, simply because it is an autoimmune attack. In many ways, it's an unexplained attack, because one doesn't quite understand why the body decides to attack its own hair follicle. From an acupuncture point of view, very often there is kidney shock. Qi very often is suspended. I've come across many cases where people have a sudden shock followed by changes to their hair. Those changes can be a premature greying or a whitening of the hair in the majority of cases, but in many cases as well, it can lead to particular hair loss, and that hair loss can be quite intractable. For example, I had a lovely patient who's come to me for years and years, and she's mother of a large family, but the first child, very sadly, was a cut death. Within 3 months, she had lost all her hair, and that hair has never come back. It was a profound and utter shock. And while she's gone on to have had quite a number of other children, the sadness and the shock of what happened still remains. So you can understand there that shock has undermined the kidney, and kidney has undermined her ability to sustain hair. In her case, hair loss is completely, it's universal, it's throughout the body. All body hair has been lost. That tends to be very, very unusual. So therefore, what do? Well, you take a detailed history just to look for a reason. Obviously, if the shock is something that perhaps a person can get over, then kidney can be restored. If the shock is so profound that the kidney is deeply affected and unable to get going again, then the alopecia will remain. So if you can decide if kidney is involved, then it is a matter of supporting the kidney and tonifying it as much as possible. And of course, deciding is it a kidney yin or a kidney yang deficiency. And I find it's almost always a kidney yang qi deficient, a sudden collapse of kidney yang. And when that happens, sometimes motivation, everything goes down, as happens with kidney yang, but also the quality of hair utterly deteriorates. But also look out for any forms of heat as well, which is in a way the direct opposite to kidney yang, and we're talking very much about chemotherapy. That's not, as I said, alopecia, but from our point of view, we don't use the word alopecia from an acupuncture perspective. We simply look at the clinical signs and symptoms, and that is hair loss. And we have to find a reason for the hair loss, and the reason for the hair loss can be manifold. It can be heat in the body put into the body in a number of ways, but chemotherapy probably is the most obvious way, but it can be other ways as well. I mean, a persistent yang rising due maybe to dietary heat. I've come across a case like that where the quality of the hair utterly deteriorated. Now, it all didn't fall out, but a good portion of it did, and then it came back again when the person altered their diet to stop taking foods that were incredibly hot, because it all entered into the stomach channel and then travelled up. Very often as well, a person might have, perhaps after another event, childbirth for example, the person might be lacking some qi, because obviously qi has parted from the body, so therefore the person has a qi deficiency, and that sometimes can lead to temporary loss of hair as well. In those situations you tonify. So it's very much, you tonify the spleen and you tonify the lung as well, because lung and the sheen of hair are associated, but kidney is the major organ regarding the robustness of hair, I suppose, the quality of hair, the thickness of hair, the darkening of the hair. And if hair suddenly over a very short period of while goes grey and then white, very often that is a sign of something suddenly having undermined the qi. There's quite a number of cases that have been documented, which are very, very interesting, historical cases really, where, say, newspaper journalists have witnessed situations occurring where a person might have been falsely accused of something and then later on exonerated, and their hair goes white and then the quality of their hair comes back again, and that's quite interesting. But we can understand that, of course, from an acupuncture point of view in terms of a temporary suspension of qi, and then the qi returns, kidney energy, kidney qi that is, returns, and then the quality and abundance and colour and quality of the hair comes right as well. So the organs involved very much lung, you tonify lung, of course lung 9 is the point to tonify lung, you tonify you tonify kidney, of course kidney 3 is the point, but you also tonify spleen as well, because the root of post-heaven qi is, I suppose, where all qi ultimately comes from and starts from. Pre-heaven, of course, if a person is deficient in pre-heaven, there's a greater tendency for this to happen, but not a lot you can do about somebody coming to you with pre-heaven essence and pre-heaven kidney qi deficiency. So you have to work with what you've got, and that is the person presenting in front of you, whether or not their pre-heaven is abundant or otherwise. But if their pre-heaven is not abundant, the prognosis and the outcome is likely to be much worse than if their pre-heaven is abundant, and I think that makes an awful lot of sense. So tonify spleen, tonify kidney, tonify lung, and take out heat if heat is part of the problem. And again, you need to take the detailed case history, the hot and cold, to find out if the person has heat in the body that can account for the hair follicles drying out and the hair being tugged out every time you brush your hair, which is very, very common as well for people whose yang is rising or who have received an overdose of yang heat in the form of chemotherapy would be the obvious example there. So a detailed case history before you progress to make sure you know where you're going. Look to find out for any subtractors that might have taken away from the quality of hair, such as the kidney going down following distressful episode or a shock, a sudden shock, and try to take a history to try to determine where the problem originates from, so you can put an appropriate remedy in place to rectify the situation. Very often though with alopecia, in other words the autoimmune attack in the hair, from a Western medical point of view, from our point of view, a sudden wipeout from kidney is very, very hard to get right, and so sometimes it just doesn't, because the kidney doesn't recover in that area. Thank you.